Hello, Internet, and you beautiful creatures of the beyond. Finally, we got to our ballerina. You remember her? We worked on her last time. A little bit. But I have a surprise for you. This is what we already work. This is the original. This is what I worked. This is the original. This is what I worked. Let me go in a bit closer. This is what I worked. This is the original. This is what I worked. This is the original. And to make it easier, ta-dam! And this was a very tedious project, so this is why I decided not to stream it for a while. And it took me a week. Well, I worked every day a little bit on it because it got frustrating after a while. I almost bit my mouse. The idea is that once you zoom in, you see that it's a tangled mess and it's difficult to see what is what and who is who and where is where. And there's quite a few little tricks I employed, and we shall go over all of them. But keep in mind that there are many, many layers here, and um, the complexity of this, because of the complexity of this, I shall have to work in parts. So first, this is gonna be the hair element of the body, and I'm gonna save it separately, and then I'm just gonna keep the general shape and continue working on the face and so on next time, not today. And then we'll move to the arms, chest, and so on. But I'm gonna do it in. I suppose this will work a little faster. Perhaps the hands are going to take some time, and maybe even the legs, because they have quite a bit of. We'll have to recreate some of the details here and there. We shall see. Some things require a bit more attention over the hands, especially the hands. The feet are, well, not as complex as the hands, but they still have quite a few shades here and there that need to be presented as good as possible. Now, um, in our model, I tried to look at the elements that would pop up, and obviously this was the biggest highlight. And so I decided to go with something general. So initially I just started with a shape, but then I realized that shape was not enough. So I needed to make an external shape and then an internal one to create this smoothing. But then if you look close, it's difficult to see close. So you kind of always have to zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. So this is why the project is very tedious. Um, so as you look here, there is quite a gradient that happens in this part, and I got frustrated because this from this whitish to this gray is very difficult to create this transition. So I just created a part that goes on top like so, just to drop a little shadow there. It's just, yeah. And then these ones, I tried like this one shouldn't pop up too much because this is the edge. We want to keep our details towards the eyes, the nose, and so on. So I didn't want anything popping up at the edge. This is actually very difficult to select right now because of the shape of the mask that I had to pull out. And I took a bit of artistic development here on my own because I changed a few of to make it look a little bit more natural. So this happens on the background, so it's a bit of a different color just to look like it's on the side of the head. Somehow it's not on the edge of the hair. Just a little neat trick. And all of these shapes have to happen here. And then we have this. Now, this happens because we have we have all of these hairs that are glimmering. And since I couldn't get something like this, it would have been very tedious to do very small details and so on. I opted to create a shape, and then I used the filter, I believe, and I went to let's see if I can remember which one it was. Image effect film grain. And um, let's see if I can select it so we can look over it. So this one, filter editor. So we have, where is it? Here's our film grain. I just played a little bit with the detail, with the values, not by much, very, very small things. Other than that, I just played with gradients to create smooth, to make it lose a little bit of the details towards this area. And I also created a secondary one here. Then, actually, this part was the easiest part. Then, this part was horror because I had to try so many freaking shapes, and it's not an exact science. You kind of have to see what pops up in the hair. And to be honest, I don't recommend doing hairs like this because, and this is not a very complicated hair in my opinion, because most of the details are lost here in the darkness, in the shade. But a lot of hair requires attention to detail and to, so in vector design it's really not worth it, just go with simple shapes. But I wanted to challenge myself to see how good I can make this hair, and I think I got pretty close. So you have to look at what pops up. So I thought this pops up pretty much. There is kind of like some elements that popped up here. This side popped up a lot. This element was very important in my opinion. Actually, this whole side is kind of the center of the head. It I don't know how exactly to pronounce myself, but think like if a line goes through the head over here, this is where your head usually turns, because right here there is a bone on which the skull sits. So somewhere here is kind of where we perceive the center of the head, at the base of the skull. Well, somewhere around this area. But I chose this area to be the center of the head because then everything can be easily constructed from this point onwards. So this is why I thought this should be very obvious on this side, as much detail as we can possibly retain to look natural. Okay, that looks okay. And then I started doing this part. Well, this isn't as complicated as it looks. On this color, you kind of lose perspective because there is some transparency happening on the edges. And this is because I blurred and I tried to make them as close as possible to the edge. So when we keep them on the body, it looks much more natural. Well, we'll have to work towards this arm and so on. So it looks a bit more in there. Of course, there are quite a few parts that had to go in here with the highlights and shadows and various parts that were darker and lighter. So I had to play around. What else? Oh, important thing. As you can see, this mask is pretty much going outside. And why is it going outside here? Because I wanted to keep the edge sharp, this edge sharp, but this edge I wanted to keep it blurred. So when you are pushing outside of the bound, I mean the mask happens to be over here. The shape of this goes outside of the mask on this side. I express myself wrongly there. So the idea is like this edge of the shape is here, this edge is going outside of the mask. Perfect. Lots and lots of details, I know, but in the long run, it will help us. So I'm gonna keep the general shape of the mask somewhere here, and I'm gonna create a separate file, and from there we're going to continue with the face and so on and so forth. And I think that will go a bit easier because it's a pretty light image from here on for onwards forwards. And aside from the hands, I think we can. I'm not gonna bother myself too much with this edge. I'm gonna try to simplify this because it's not such an important detail. And we shall see. I think this area will require quite a bit of experimentation and work when we get to it. This is the center of our subject. This is where all of the mobility happens. This is where the hips move. This is where our spine connects to the hips and so on, and to the ribs. So this area is very pivotal to our subject. So we should focus as much detail as possible. Well, although they are subtle, it is important that we get it right. And from there we shall see. Yeah, hope gave you a nice insight. It's I'm gonna take my time with this project, even if it takes me many episodes. I think if we get it right, we can improve on a lot of aspects and learn. Because when you work really slow on something, it, you get like a feeling for it. The more you iterate over something, the more your muscle memory remembers the lines and how it feels to see a muscle, to design a muscle, or to design the shape of a body. So I think if you guys try to follow along or create your own images, try to go in as much depth as possible sometimes, not on all project, but once in a while when you get a project that you really like and you feel like you can implement as much details on it without losing your patience, you can learn a lot. Stay awesome, guys. Stay safe and have a wonderful day. Bye 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 bye.